From the Western Mass News studios in Springfield, this is Western Mass News Getting Answers with Dave Mattson.
Thanks for joining me for this week's edition of Western Mass News Getting Answers. Every week I'm joined by political and business leaders and other newsmakers to talk about the issues that impact you. And this week, pleased to be joined by Tony Cignoli, the president of Cignoli Company Political, Governmental, and Media Consultants. Tony and I are going to look back on the Massachusetts primary results, the impact of women voters in November in that election, and the midterm election all across the country. Tony, always good to see you.
Fantastic to be here, Dave.
Everything good?
Yeah, very much so. Very, very much so.
Busy time of year. Very interesting. Now, as we look at this, it's been a couple of weeks now since the Massachusetts primary, almost 2 weeks. The two most talked about races in Western Mass that I don't think we expected to see it this way, with Governor's Council and State Representative in the 8th Hampton District.
Yes.
I want to start with Tara Jacobs, stunning win in the council primary, topping. This is what amazes me, and for the amount of money they spent, too. Topping 3 prominent attorneys from the Springfield area. Do you think anybody gave her a chance in that race? What happened there?
Reality, anyone in my field, the pundits, the political players, no one saw Tara coming.
Yeah.
It was an amazing campaign, and as we learned afterwards, or even a week or so before, we started to hear about how hard she had worked by herself with her support team, small group of folks. She spent very little money, I think around $10,000, to your point on how much had been spent by the other 3 combined.
I heard those guys were spent anywhere between $75,000 and $95,000.
Oh, yeah. You add up the 3, there was a good significant 6-figure battle there overall. But it was amazing. She was quiet. She had a billboard up in the north. And perhaps one of the things here that might have been obvious that a lot of folks, including myself, may not have seen in this race, was that here's a woman running in a time of incredible female issues, candidates, as we saw across the board, winning in Massachusetts, but something else. She was running to replace Mary Hurley, the venerable activist, incredible governor's counselor, judge, former mayor, a storied, iconic woman in a position of power for a long time. The first female mayor of the city of Springfield. So here's 3 guys, 3 attorneys, well qualified, duking it out with each other, and she comes right up the middle. It was a classic move, really, really stunning.
Now, the other thing I'd read about that, too, was that she really focused her attention on Berkshire, Franklin, and Hampshire counties, while the other 3 candidates just kind of focused on the greater Springfield area, where the majority of the votes are.
And so smart of her to have done that, and probably one that even I myself in the past would always say, gosh, Hampden County always outvotes the other counties combined. It's the seat of power. It's the seat of the congressional district for Chairman Neal. But again, how smart on her part, because you had 3 folks duking it out for Hampden County, who had Hampden County bases.
Indeed,
Jeff Morneau, Sean Allen, Michael Fenton. I mean, literally, it was an embattled campaign in the city of Springfield itself, and Chicopee and Holyoke. How smart of her to spend so much time and interest beyond Holyoke North, as I would call it.
Thinking back to, I don't ever remember a candidate out of the Berkshires. Usually they're from the greater Springfield. I mean, I go back to the days of when Ray Fontana held the seat.
Wow.
But it never from the Berkshires.
Correct. There, too, this has happened once before. You had Peter Vickery come in out of the blue to win against a field of folks who had names, who had good endorsements, who had money. And the amazing thing about Peter is that he had this incredible British accent. He certainly was not a Western Mass kind of a player. He wasn't from here, didn't have roots, but did the same thing.
He did,
Very smart campaign, north of Holyoke.
Has to be. All right, let's go to the 8th Hampton District. Shirley Arriaga defeating the better-known candidate of Joel McAuliffe, and by a good margin, too.
Yes, yeah. Interesting campaign, both well-known, both well-liked. Shirley certainly became well-liked. Had, as you pointed out, Joel McAuliffe, better known as a Chicopee City Councilor, the fellow that brought fiber and broadband to his district, had been out there on a lot of issues. And it always, as a Chicopee City Councilor, it's almost like he was more of a legislative mindset on things.
And he worked for Lesser.
And he worked exactly. So worked for Eric Lesser, but Shirley Arriaga, the classic of politics. If Joe Napolitan were sitting here, he'd say it to you. She told her story, and it was an amazing story.
Great story.
That folks could embrace from any background in the city of Chicopee. So not only did she have the important endorsement of the sitting state rep, Joe Wagner, so well-known, well-liked, she also was able to go out there and say, here's who I am. I'm a single mom. I'm a veteran. I went to the Elms, perfect choice of a college if you're running in Chicopee, right? I got my degree, and then I went to Western New England University. You look at her, And to make the analogy, the Horatio Algiers story, so to speak, look at what I've done. And I think people dug that. And they've got to like you to vote for you, and that was a likable story, without a doubt.
Indeed. All right. One of the more closely watched contests, the race between State Rep Jake Oliveira and Sidney Levin Epstein. I think a lot of us thought that was going to be a lot closer.
Everyone, again, in our circles and whatnot, thought that would be the case.
Yeah.
Because Sidney put together a campaign that was extremely high tech. She had that kind of background. She had that kind of advisors who knew how to do everything from perhaps algorithms on social media to significant voter ID and GOTV. But here again, Jake Oliveira, somewhat like Tara Jacobs, kind of went out there and did the hardcore grunt campaign, the door knocking, the rest.
Yep.
You saw posts from him in the dead heat of August, 100 degrees out there, and he had this electric scooter to help him get around places like Belchertown, where the homes are football fields apart. It works. The old school stuff still can work well, without a doubt.
I think in smaller towns too. Well, anywhere. I think you get a good feeling having the candidate come right to your house to meet you and say, your vote's important to me.
Exactly. That personal connection. Yeah.
All right. Now we look ahead to November. Most of the House and Senate incumbents in Western Mass face no challengers at all, but we do have a few races. So let's take a look at some of those. Let's start with Sherry Arriaga's challenger, Independent Sean Goonan.
That I think the amazing victory for her, the energy that's there, the fact that I think if we were to break down the votes that she's gotten, it appears to me that she got a lot of independent and unenrolled votes. And those folks I think will stay the course with her for the general election. So certainly her name recognition, the rest, important. I think she'll refill her campaign coffers quickly. Sean Goonan has been out there before, a really energetic young guy.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't predict, especially given everything we just talked about. You can't prognosticate. But I think what you'll see with these two is that they will engage on issues. It'll be a nice campaign, nothing negative or anything like that. And again, something that's probably good for Jacoby because of the kinds of issues that they'll bring to the forefront in their debates and discussions.
All right, the governor's council race. Tara Jacobs facing a Republican, John Comerford of Palmer.
Probably, again, given the makeup of the district, Democrats that come out to vote, and that heavy independent unenrolled electorate that's out there too, they're going to skew Democrat in a year when they're going to look at the ballot and they're going to see all these women in constitutional positions on the Democratic side. That's one that if I were to prognosticate, let's not count Tara out yet again. It's one where the demographics benefit her greatly.
Yeah. State Senate, Oliveira against Republican Bill Johnson.
Interesting on that one. Jake's got the momentum, certainly. He's got the fact that he's as a member of the House right now. But Bill Johnson has got some pretty decent support on the Republican side of the ledger. Karen Polito had been out for him just before the primary. What I'm watching in that one, and I think probably something that Jake Oliveira is watching too, is what kind of support might Johnson get from Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, specifically the Baker PAC, what money might come in, because Baker has got that PAC of his own, and he's writing pretty significant five-figure checks to folks. So we're watching that.
We don't think he's going to be writing checks for the governor's race, we're guessing.
I don't think so. No, not in the governor's race. No.
In Westfield, Westfield's John Vilas being challenged by Republican in Agawam City Council, Cecilia Calabrese.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see somebody going up against Vilas. He's pretty strong.
He's so popular, and he's one of those, I call him multimedia public servants, because he's not just a state senator, former state representative. He's got the other piece, as Mayor Sarno likes to call him and others and whatnot, the Captain America thing. Though he's major in the United States Army Reserve, he has that expertise behind him as well. And we see him sometimes in media for that reason. It's also why I think he was so incredibly front and center on the Holyoke Soldiers' Home. Certainly he represents Holyoke, but the role that he took on that was amazing.
Yeah.
He's made a statewide name for himself. Cecilia Calabrese, what a very nice woman from Agawam, very well thought of there, a big vote getter. I think that she'll engage as much as she can. But again, so much seems to be in Vilas's favor. In addition to redistricting, he gets West Springfield. And as a lot of us know, West Springfield is so much like Westfield. We share so much of the same media, the two communities, and they know John Vilas well. Stunningly, I think Vilas has pretty much door-knocked all of West Springfield. which is pretty interesting that he could find the time to do that already.
You do see him ever, in addition to working on the job. All right, the 7th Hampton District, Aaron Saunders against James Harrington. This is the Olivera seat.
It is. The Olivera seat, the Ludlow seat, the Belchertown seat. But again, redistricting comes into play. New Salem is part of this. I think if you ask the average person in Ludlow or Belchertown, where's New Salem? They're going to say, what are you talking about, But that's a big district to campaign in, very rural in some areas. And certainly you've got the larger base of Ludlow. And this is a rematch, so to speak. It's almost like Ali Frazier 2, or in this instance 3. Chip Harrington had run for the state Senate several times against Eric Lesser as a Democrat, as a Republican. Chip had run for the seat against Jake Olivera. Jake defeated Chip, but narrowly. And Aaron has run for the state Senate when Eric Lesser first ran. So these two fellas are familiar with each other. They're good candidates. But again, when you look at the breakdown of Democrat and then the other piece, Independent Republican, because that is one thing for Chip. He's had the support in the past of Charlie Baker. Part of the argument there is, I know the governor, elect me, and I can work for it. But Charlie Baker's not going to be there, future tense. Interesting, too, because gubernatorial politics plays in, and Healy has already endorsed Saunders. Saunders now being able to say, well, I'm pretty sure I know who the next governor is going to be. This is someone that I can call. But this will be engaged, and watch Ludlow on this one, as how that goes.
On that one, too. All right. And we've got the 3rd Hampton District, Nick Boldiger, Republican, there being challenged by Democrat Anthony Russo.
Very interesting there.
And that's a big district now,
too. It is such a large geographic area. It really is, with an awakening of a lot of the folks there. The Carvana issue in Southwick woke a lot of people up, and they're still involved. They're watching what's happening. They're participating what's going on, not just municipally, but they're looking at the State House. So this is going to be one heck of a battle. This is almost a Biden-Trump kind of thing, given that the Republican, Nick Boldiger, the incumbent, 12 years there, conservative Republican, and then you've got Anthony Russo, who's a top vote getter in Agawam, like Cecilia Calabrese you mentioned before. So really, the aspect of both of them having to identify and bring their votes out is going to be huge. And I think this is one that you'll see fall on party lines, certainly. But again, we come back to the largest party, the largest affiliation in Massachusetts. That group that elected Charlie Baker governor. The independents, the NROs, who makes that argument? And I think that some of the questions that'll be on the ballot in November can play in a race like this. Like, where do you stand on a millionaire's tax? Gosh, where do you stand on unenrolled or undocumented aliens having the right to a license to drive? So I think that those issues will maybe play in a race like this. All
right, Tony, we got to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the statewide primary results and what we could expect in November. Stay with us. Welcome back to Western Mass News, Getting Answers. My guest this week, political and governmental and media consultant Tony Cignoli. Tony, let's start this segment with an assessment of Eric Lesser's run for lieutenant governor. He finished second to Kim Driscoll by over 100,000 votes. Let's look at the results of that, and then we can talk about what do you think is next for Eric.
Interesting. A very difficult race to have taken on for Senator Lesser. Certainly a significant victory for Kim Driscoll, but the flip side of that, a lot of it comes down to media. She may have been the mayor of Salem, but she was in the greater Boston media for over a decade. People saw her, knew who she was. Certainly, Year of the Woman again, and not just female candidates across the board in constitutional offices, with the exception of Bill Galvin's seat, but something else. We're already breaking down who voted in the primary. It is a stunning number of women who came out to vote. And also, new registrations, predominantly women. And I think they looked at Kim Driscoll and said, I can identify her, let's go. A difficult race for Eric Lesser to have won. What's next for Eric Lesser? He's bright, he's sharp. He's got, as I like to often say, an old term, a platinum Rolodex of all kinds of players across the nation, as we saw from the money that he was able to raise for this race. But the long and the short of it, I'm not sure if it's politics that he thinks about again for elected office. He's young. I'm hearing a lot of talk about the possibility of him perhaps being in this next governor's cabinet. He's got a lot of brain power. And if I were in the executive branch, I'd probably try to see if I could tap that brain power to bring him back into government, to keep him in government and not an elected position.
I know a lot of us were surprised when he did decide to run for lieutenant governor, because I think the conventional wisdom was he was biding his time until Richie Neal decided to step down.
That was what most of us thought, without a doubt. And that's the unique thing. Chairman Neal is in a position to win re-election yet again. His power nationally is incredible. I mean, this is a major player, as we know. We know him locally, so we always think of him as Richie and all that.
Yeah.
But he's, literally one of the 6 most powerful people in the United States. So it's his call when that time comes. And I think that Eric maybe got impatient, in that waiting aspect. It would have probably been a very different race for him. The first congressional district, where if you look at how he did do, and you look at the map of Massachusetts, from Worcester west, obviously, he took those cities and towns. So certainly in a congressional race, he might have had more of an opportunity.
Boston's just tough.
It is.
Actually, you think about that, as far as looking at Richie Neal, too, the fact that even if Democrats do lose the House, he's still the minority chair of that, and he still wields a lot of power.
He still would wield a lot of power. The other unique thing about Richie Neal, and he's a partisan, strong Democrat, no question, but a lot of Republicans like him. And I think I can point to Washington Post and Wall Street Journal articles over the years where you've had Republicans say, yeah, he's on the other side, but I kind of like to look over his shoulder and cheat off his homework now and then, especially on tax issues and things like that, the stuff that most people don't want to deal with. I've heard that from Republicans. Yeah, let's see what Neal's thinking about on this. So you're right, he's got relationships on the other side of the aisle.
Something we don't hear much of these days
at all.
No. So, Tony, you mentioned it too. We look at the fact that out of the congressional, the seats here in Massachusetts, as far as the top seats, that the only candidate who's not a woman is on the Democratic side is our Secretary of State.
Right.
As we look ahead, and Republicans aren't even fielding candidate for treasurer. What are the Republicans' chances for taking any of these offices?
It's really difficult for another reason, too. What I've seen with a lot of the Republican candidates, with the exception, obviously, of Jeff Deal and Chris Doty, who lost the governor's primary against Deal, none of them really seem to be ready day one after the primary. They're still raising the money. They're still doing the basics. We're spoiled here in Western Mass because we saw Brian Lee's and how Brian did it. Brian began running the year before for a Senate seat and ran all the way through. Not the traditional, let's wait to find out who our opponent is after the primary is over. I think that's a handicap that is tough for a lot of these folks. If there is a golden lining for them at all, it could be trying to tie on to some of the questions that are out there that may bring out more Republicans or that may get independents, unenrolleds, other folks not party affiliated to come out and think Republican, perhaps.
Yeah.
And again, too, let's bear something else in mind. In an awful long time, you got to go back to 1982, we've had 2 Democratic governors. Every other governor has been a Republican. That is one thing every once in a while. I'm not sure that Jeff Deal is the person that some Democrats and the folks who aren't enrolled would look at as another Charlie Baker or as a Paul Cellucci or a Bill Weld.
Yeah.
But you never know. I think in this instance, however, Maura Healey is such a well-oiled campaign and machine. It's stunning. She's as good of a candidate as she is a basketball player. Stunning.
Stunning.
Yes.
All right, Tony, another break.
Sure.
When we come back, Tony and I are going to talk about the influence of female voters. We've touched on that here at home and across the country. Welcome back to Western Mass News Getting Answers, joined this week by political, governmental, and media consultant Tony Cignoli. Tony, we talked about this, the striking political gains coming as some women's issues have really moved to the forefront in the national debate and shifted the landscape for the November midterm elections. A surge in enrollment, as you've talked about, among women voters in some states, along with a stunning rejection of an effort to ban abortion in Republican-led Kansas and places like that on that Supreme Court decision. As we look at that, what are the issues that are going to galvanize people and getting women out to vote more than anything else?
I'll tell you, in poll after poll, whether Zogby, Gallup, Quinnipiac, Suffolk, we're finding a lot of common denominator. That the bottom line is that the Roe decision, the Dobbs decision, is gigantic in moving women, even Republican-affiliated women, independents, others and whatnot. This is the issue that's moving and motivating them. They've kind of put the blinders on now with all the other things they may be concerned about as business women, as entrepreneurs, as moms, as grandmothers. This is issue one.
It is.
And it's stunning because we're seeing something else that surprises me. We're now identifying women who are pro-life, regardless of party, who also are concerned about this, basically saying, I want the choice aspect. I believe pro-life. However, I want my daughter, my granddaughter to have a choice. I don't want a doctor to tell me, what it's going to be. it is gigantic. We cannot explain enough or underestimate enough how big of an issue this actually is. It has moved some races from absolute, for sure, losses for Democrats predominantly to races that are now in play.
So this far outweighs concerns about inflation or the economy, COVID?
Yeah. It absolutely does.
Yeah.
It's number one. Also, too, because of the registrations that we're seeing of women right now. More women are registering than ever before everywhere. And if we look at some of the primary races, Ohio, Michigan, Georgia, Massachusetts, that's the other thing. So many new registered voters are women. They're voting by mail. They're voting early. They'll do anything to get to that ballot box no matter what. And this issue drives them. Certainly, the economy is next on the minds of most, including these women as well, too, who want a good quality of life for their family, their children, etc. So these issues are there. At any given moment between now and the general election, any one of these issues has the opportunity to just explode in any one of these races. And, we think we've seen some rock'em sock'em campaigning so far. Wait as we get closer to November. Yeah.
The gloves come off.
I think so, yeah.
So we look at that, the impact on these issues on who controls the House and Senate. 6 months ago, it looked like Republicans would regain control, I think, of both the House and Senate. What do you see now? What's it look like less than 2 months before the election?
It's still jump ball in a lot of instances because the littlest thing can move that voter that's in the middle, who's not hardcore affiliated Democrat, Republican, Trump, Biden, or who's not moved on Roe itself. So now what we're starting to do is watch Hispanic voters in a big way. We're starting to watch men as well, who you did not see come out in the primary thinking that it's the generals when I show up to actually vote. And we're tracking to see where they're at. There's certainly, the economy is a big issue, but a lot of them too are listening to their wives, to their daughters, etc., on the abortion issue. So everything is jump ball still. You just never know. I mean, a freight rail strike could have an impact on moving votes in some ways. Certainly Lindsey Graham now with this latest piece on his part about abortion. I mean, that hit the Richter scale in some states yesterday. In Ohio, I heard it from both sides, Republican and Democrat. You're kidding. One side obviously saying, thank you, Lindsey. The other side saying, heck no. But at the same time, Republicans on J.D. Vance's side there, who are strong anti-choice and strong pro-life, I mean, they viewed this as something that will fire up their base, at least monetarily and whatnot, and make sure they come out to vote. So it really all comes down to who can get their people to the polls now.
Quickly, on the Republic, as we look at 2024, do you see Joe Biden running for a second term? And if he doesn't, who do you might
I
think
don't.
would be there?
Though
You don't?
everything you're hearing from the White House, from Joe Biden, is that he's in the game. And he's got to say that. You don't want to be a lame duck this early. I will say over the last 2 weeks, you've seen a new Joe Biden, perhaps picked up by some of his victories. I mean, I got to tell you, I can't hit a knee as fast as he did, and bound around the way he did in some of his speeches recently. That's when Joe Biden's at his best. He's good on the attack. He's good on the fight. He doesn't like being on defense. Offense is his game. So my gut is we do not see him run again, just for the personal reason. It is darn hard to do this job at 60 let alone 80. Yeah.
And Republican side, we've got about 15 seconds.
Sure.
Do you think it'll be Trump?
I think he will attempt it. I think it'll be there. Or I think he'll cry, look what they've done to me. I can't run again. This is a business. This is, the Trump brand. I think you'll see a lot of different players look, too, to give him a push. DeSantis is not going to sit back in Florida. He's going to give him a shot. He wants to be president. And there's a few others the same way on the Republican side.
Tony, always good to see you.
Great.
Thank you for the time.
Absolutely.
Again, my thanks to Tony Cignoli for being with me today. For you at home for watching, I'm Dave Batson. Stay safe, stay well if you can. Join us next week for Western Mass News, Getting Answers.